Hello, and thank you for joining us for today's presentation. I'm Shuker, CTO at DrayTek UK and Ireland, and joining me is Joe Deacy, one of our technical account managers. The topic for today's presentation is VigorACS 3, the latest version of our network management server. Today's presentation consists of an overview of VigorACS 3 to give you an idea of its capabilities and a comparison to VigorACS 2, and also an introduction to our new Sd-Wan functionality that we're very excited to show you and talk about. We'll also be giving you a full demo of the interface so that we can show you around the system and give you a nice opportunity to see its capabilities. Joe, one of our experts with network management service as well, so he's going to be doing the demo, and he's going to be able to give you a whole overview of the ACS 3 system to give you a chance to really see how it's used. So our agenda today is just giving you an overview of VigorACS 3 and the differences from it to ACS 2. I hope many of you will be familiar with our existing ACS server version, ACS 2, but we wanted to just give you an overview to give you a kind of an idea of the differences between it and VigorACS 3. And then also we'll be showing SD-WAN, so giving you a really full idea of the capabilities of the SD-WAN solution and also the Hotspot solution, which are two new things to VigorACS 3. And then we've got a demo, and then we have to have some frequently asked questions, and then a Q&A session. So VigorACS 3. VigorACS 3 is our latest version of DrayTek's network management system. You can use VigorACS to manage any DrayTek routers, switches, or access points. This provides you with a platform for configuration, monitoring, and management of all of your devices on all of your sites. VigorACS 3 builds on the previous developments of our management systems. We've been running central management for many years, so we've had VigorACS ISP, VigorACS I, and its immediate predecessor, VigorACS 2. All DrayTek products are quite capable without central management, but there's often a tipping point where managing a large number of devices makes sense to do centrally, and it simplifies some of the routine tasks like firmware updates and configuration backups, and makes management of the whole estate so much easier. The first version of VigorACS which we're launching is VigorACS 3 self-hosted. So the self-hosted version means that you can install VigorACS 3 on a server that you own, either on-prem or in your cloud, and then the devices will communicate with the VigorACS 3 server directly using a management protocol called TR69. This is communication over TLS. It's in a form of HTTPS requests between the DrayTek devices, which could be routers, APs, or switches, often collectively referred to as CPEs, and that communication is with the server, the VigorACS 3 server. Any modern web browser can log into the VigorACS 3 server to check information, make configuration changes, and these changes are communicated by the VigorACS server directly to the CPEs. So that means that the browser managing ACS doesn't need any direct access to the devices. The devices will typically report into VigorACS periodically, and it will store logs and data reported to it by the devices. So that means that you get, compared to just managing devices locally, you have longer term storage, because the CPEs themselves don't have any longer term storage on them when it comes to the kind of regularly written stuff like logs and usage over time. So by using VigorACS, it allows you to get that picture over a larger period of time, and then really develop insights into how the networks are performing. So let's take a look at the key features which make up the core functionality in VigorACS 3. First thing is provisioning. So this is allowing automated actions to occur when a new device appears in VigorACS 3. This allows you to automate things like updating devices to the latest firmware version, applying standard configurations such as security settings and profiles. There might be some specific things that as a company you want to always have set on every single device, and VigorACS has a really nice way of automating that. And also, if you have any changes to a policy, then you can make that updated on the general provisioning profile and then also roll it out to the existing estate as well. Then we have monitoring, so it allows you to be informed and alerted when events occur, such as dropped VPN tunnels, failover to 4G, or any audit-related messages, or any changes on the devices. So it means that if someone makes a local change to a device, ACS will know about it because the CPU will report it in to ACS. And then statistics gives you data over time from the device and allows you to gain insights into the health of your network and any potential issues that you want to investigate. Then we have SD-WAN, a new feature which takes this further with greater level of detail of insights and control. We'll come into that in much more detail later. We have the VPN Wizard that makes creating VPNs a lot easier. So it allows you to create VPNs using drag and drop, and that makes it much easier to create VPNs compared to having to manually key in all the details and credentials onto all the different devices. We have scheduled maintenance, which allows you to automate configuration backups, schedule firmware updates and configuration changes, and kind of scheduling any restarts or anything like that. Reporting allows network level reports on your estate, so it allows you to kind of easily find out what network usage is of the whole estate or firmware versions of specific devices, which is it makes the issue of managing lots of different devices and understanding what they are and which devices they are much easier. Then we have the Hotspot Portal, another new feature that gives you a convenient way to offer guests internet access. So VigorACS 3 builds on VigorACS 2. Hopefully some of you will be familiar with VigorACS 2, and because it's something that we've been running for a few years now, we wanted to give you an overview of the differences between VigorACS 2 and VigorACS 3 for anyone who's currently got an ACS 2 server, just so that they can understand the difference in the capabilities. The first thing is easier to talk about what's not changed. I mean, in its core, VigorACS 3 has all the excellent features of VigorACS 2, and it's an evolution rather than a complete change. The development stack that we've used is the same, so it's developed in Java with Wildfly as the application server, and it's supported by two database engines, MariaDB and InfluxDB. The reason we use two is because InfluxDB is much more suited for logging things over time, so that allows us to have much more efficient logging of all of the graphs, everything, and then using MariaDB as our core database. So the profiles, configurations are all the same, so anyone can update from ACS 2 and retain their profiles and their configurations. And likewise, the network structure is very similar, with devices organized into individual networks that you can create. And the user management is unchanged, so same user profiles and user groups that are applied to networks, and users being a member of those groups or one or more groups is still the same. And finally, importantly, VigorACS 3 is backwards compatible with existing devices, so you can manage so if you can manage a device with ACS 2, you'll be able to do the same management of that device in ACS 3. The exception of this is the new SD-WAN and hotspot features, which are supported by specific models because it needs a little bit more technology on the CPU. So that's something that we'll just cover in more detail as we explain about the SD-WAN. So the kind of obvious first thing you'll see is the web interface is very slightly different. If on the left here I've got the ACS 2 interface, on the right we've got the ACS 3 one, so that's just a simple thing. We've got the same sort of things with the validation code, and also you can enable two-factor authentication or have external authentication if you want to have an external authentication server to have just a single login. We've got the ability newly to put in kind of adverts, so you can have a login bulletin or an advert at the top as well. So that's a new thing to ACS 3. And we've got an updated dashboard. As you'll see from the demo, the navigation is similar but a little bit different. We've kind of streamlined the dashboards and widgets to make it easier to find things at a glance. So we hope you'll find that that's a lot nicer compared to ACS 2. And one of the big navigation changes is we've moved where the network management is, so we put it to the top, so it is hidden easily. You click on the top and expand it, so that's been kind of reorganized so that it's more intuitive to use the network and navigate around the system. And then finally, big new thing is the SD-WAN, which we'll be going into in a lot of depth, that has lots of insights and a nice dashboard that allows you to see things about the different network. And then we've got the Hotspot Portal. Again, going to cover in a moment to talk about that and explain everything about the hotspot. Licensing is another change. So on VigorACS 2, you had a licensing based on number of nodes, and a node is one device, be it a router, switch, or access point. Change in licensing on ACS 3 is that switches and APs count as half a node. So if we just use the example I've got on screen, if you had 10 routers, 10 switches, and 40 APs, that would work out as 35 nodes in VigorACS 3, compared to the 60 it would be on ACS 2. So that gives you a bit of an overview of the difference between ACS 2 and ACS 3 at kind of top level. But let's just now look at the SD-WAN functionality and give you an overview of that and an idea of the capabilities. So why SD-WAN? Well, increasingly lots of services are being consumed in the cloud, and people have multiple different internet connections. Also, there's often a hybrid type structure where people have kind of an on-premise or private cloud or kind of servers in their HQ, and also have a combination of kind of cloud services from various providers that they're consuming. And it's important to be able to understand how your internet connections are performing, and also select the correct internet connection for each of your applications and be able to control the routing. And what the SD-WAN does is it allows you to monitor the WAN connections, get an idea of how they're performing beyond just whether they're up or down, and also be able to control which applications use which connections, and be able to get visibility of the application usage and also VoIP usage, so that you can tell the devices how they should behave under certain circumstances, so that they can react to a WAN operating more poorly, and perhaps then fail over to send applications or VoIP traffic via a different WAN, or alternatively via a VPN. And also with VPNs and MPLSs, you have different sorts of routing, so you often need to program the routing into it, and SD-WAN allows you to have that done in a more automated way. With SD-WAN, the functionality needs the support of the devices. There's a little bit more reporting they need to do, and more analytics that's on the device that needs to be reported to ACS. And for this, it means that it's the newer models that have the technical capability to do that SD-WAN functionality, in addition to all the normal routing and performance. The current devices that are supported are the Vigor 2865 and 2927 series. We've also, on the roadmap, got plans to add support for the 2765, 2962 and 3910, and other models that we launch in the future will likely support SD-WAN as well. The firmware that's currently on the 65 and 2927 is the firmware that currently supports SD-WAN. The big change in the SD-WAN functionality compared to what you've got previously is the ability to see the quality and reliability of a WAN. It's the mean opinion score is a key measure we use, and we use this for the different WANs and also for VPN and VoIP. And this is a rating based on the measurement of latency, loss, and jitter during a period. The router will ping 8.8.8.8 via every interface and report the results back to the ACS server, and it will use that to get an average MOS score. And you're able to see the MOS scores across the network and drill into each individual device and see the quality. This allows you to then configure the ACS server to tell the CPUs to take certain actions if the MOS score goes below a certain value. It could be that you want to move over to a different WAN if the MOS score is poorer, or you would have a preferred WAN for VoIP, and if the MOS score drops, then you might have the preferred WAN for VoIP change so that it goes to a different WAN. But the dashboard itself gives you an idea of it across all the different devices, and then you can actually drill into an individual unit as well. On that side, there's, as part of SD-WAN, also application visibility. So you can see what application usage is per site and across the whole estate for certain applications and protocols, and you can get this by application and by client. So this can give you an idea of what type of traffic is going across the network, what type of services have been consumed, which gives you a better level of insight into how the network's being used. And also, as part of that identification, allows us to do application root policies. So you can apply policies of which WANs and criteria and failover based on certain different applications. So if you've got key applications that are important to the business that you're consuming, then those services can be configured with policies to select the desired route. And you've got full control over whether it has NAT or routing. So if you've got a primary connection that goes over a private network and then it also then fails over, you can control whether or not if it forces NAT or forces routing when it goes over a different connection. So this gives you a lot of control for coping with different types of network topology. Another part of the SD-WAN is being able to automatically, at a point and click, configure VPNs. So you can go into the ACS profile, ACS interface and select the devices and just drag and drop from one router to another to create a VPN tunnel. And this will allow you to have the router, the ACS system automatically create a VPN with secure settings with complex pre-shared keys. So that means that by default it will be with secure configuration and high encryption. Also, with the remote routers, when IP changes, ACS can automatically update the VPN profile so that it can regain the connection. So that helps also with coping with dynamic IPs on some sites. And taking this further, we have a full mesh VPN as well. So you can apply a full mesh to a network. That's where every single router is connected to a VPN to every other router in the network. So for a network, you can apply full mesh, and ACS will automatically go away and create tunnels to every single router, and it's able to design and suggest the LAN subnet changes. So if you've got a few CPEs with the same LAN subnet, they can be reconfigured to accommodate the mesh design. So that's another nice feature to automate configurations. And the other major functionality is the VigorACS 3 hotspot solution. So a hotspot is where you are providing guest internet access and giving them a way to the users a way to log in and give them some sort of terms and conditions that they're agreeing to before they log in. We've had hotspot on DrayTek products for a while. There's the kind of two types of hotspot solution you can consider. One is a distributed hotspot where each router is a hotspot server and you configure the hotspot on the router itself, and there isn't any external communication to anywhere else. It just serves the request, has a splash page that people log into, and then if they're approved, they're given internet access. But what the VigorACS does is it gives you a centralized hotspot where you can control the configuration of the hotspot, splash screen, and all of that, all of those profiles centrally from VigorACS, and apply that to every single branch. It allows you to more easily set it up. But also with Radius, you can have a Radius server communicating to VigorACS 3 so that you can then have the centralized login. If we look at the comparison between the two, the distributed is quite good for a smaller number of locations and supports all the different login methods, including login via SMS SIM and voucher PIN. Whereas the centralized hotspot supports click-through and social media login, leaving from Radius. So it doesn't support the SMS PIN or voucher pins at the moment. And quota management is supported on both. This allows you to, for any users logged in, to set them time limits, number of device limits, bandwidth limits, so that they're not overly using all of the bandwidth and session limits. Splash pages are similar between the two, but the centralized one is a little bit more advanced with more flexibility. It also lets you preview it in ACS3 when you're designing it, and you can see the changes. And more easily, if you wanted to update it, you can do it centrally and then apply that to all of your devices. On language, the distributed one is just a single language, but the centralized one allows you to have translation files, for multilingual support. And provisioning, as I mentioned, is made a lot easier by being centralized. And also, user information analytics is easier. With the distributed one, there's not much storage on the devices, so you have to plug in a USB stick to have some basic information storage, but there isn't kind of analytics, whereas with the centralized you get analytics, insights about desk network usage. So that's a nice addition. And also there's the ability to have people to opt into marketing as well, which you then have a centralized place where that's recorded for you. Cost is slightly higher because you've got to have the infrastructure of the Radius server and also have the ACS server. So the distributed one is slightly lower cost. To support the hotspot, it needs to be supported by the devices themselves. All of the current range is supported, so the 2765, 2865, 2927, 2962 and 3910. Also, some of the older models do support the hotspot feature as well. If you look on our website on ACS3, we've got a full list of all the different devices and which firmwares they need to be to support the hotspot. I'd like to just talk about just to give a bit of idea of the flow of how it will work. So a client will connect to the router. It could be connected via wireless, via an AP connected to the router, or it could be connected directly on the LAN. And it attempts to access the internet. The router will direct them to the external portal server, and the client will see a splash page with the authentication methods to log in. When they attempt to log in, that authentication is passed to the external Radius server that creates a user account and then tells the router that the user is able to connect. Then the router will redirect the client to a kind of landing page, and the client is then granted internet access. There's a variety of login methods available in the Hotspot portal. So you've got different click methods here, click through, social media, where they're using their own kind of social media accounts, and then a Radius where you create accounts directly, and also you've got an option to leave information with a chat box. So this is really helpful for marketing, allows people to opt into communications. The chat boxes can be set as mandatory or optional for gaining internet access. It's also good to have kind of a terms and conditions where they can read, and they can click to read the terms and conditions in our Hotspot portal. I mentioned also about guest languages, so you can speak their language by loading the translation files. It's made quite easy by having the files that can be uploaded. And also network analytics, so you can get insights to the kind of ranking of number of users and where they're logging into, and also which of the hotspots are the most popular ones. And you can get a bit of insight into how many times they're visiting and the people are visiting most. So that's quite a nice kind of feature on the hotspot. So that gives a bit of an overview of the hotspot. And now I'd like to move on to the live demo. So we've got a demo of the interface that we're going to give you. So I'm going to pass over to Joe so that he can take control of the presentation and give you a overview of the whole functionality. So Joe, if you want to take over.
Welcome to this demo of VigorACS 3, which covers orientation of the new user interface, Hotspot Portal and SD-WAN. On the screen, we see the login for VigorACS 3. Details have been entered, so let's select Login. VigorACS 3 now has a new user interface. There has been some changes with the menu structure. So first we'll begin with some orientation of the system. On the top right, we can see the user account that has just logged in, and we can see this user is a system administrator. There is 5 levels of user privilege available, from system administrator through to a view-only operator. You can set up users as a local user database, or we can also support external authentication. The right-hand side icon here shows the changes that can be applied for the user. So auto logout can be modified for this session, change language, set a new password, two-factor authentication can be enabled, change theme from light to dark, and also we can log out. On the left-hand side is the menu bar. The menu bar has been reduced, the descriptions have been removed, but if you do hover over the icons, you can get the description displayed there. Also, if you want to make full use of the screen's real estate, we can select this icon to totally remove the menu bar and bring it back again. The menu bar is separated into two. There's this divider line here. The top section will dynamically change depending on what's been selected. So maybe that might be a network or device, router, switch, access point will have different menu options available. The bottom section will not change. These options are static, and these are the system menu options. We have features like the scheduled backup and scheduled firmware upgrades that can be applied from here. The About menu option here tells us that this demo is being done on VigorACS 3.0.5. License information can be checked from here, viewing the expiry date and number of licenses that have been used. On the top left, we have the Display tab. The Display tab shows what's currently being focused on for providing information on the dashboard. And currently we've got the VigorACS 3 demo server, which is the root level network on this demo environment server. So there's a total of 15 devices that have been registered. Under this root level network, there is 4 subnetworks that have been created, and within each of these, there is a number of registered devices. Within the demo network here, we have 6 devices that are registered. All of these are showing green with the tick there, and that indicates that all of them are registered into ACS and manageable from ACS at this point. You can select a device individually here, and this will bring us to the device dashboard where VigorACS can show the configuration and information of that specific device. If we select model, this allows us to group the devices by their model series, and we can locate the devices that way as well. There is a search function on the top here, and this allows a partial search, whether it be by device name, WAN IP address, or MAC address. And very easy to find devices, especially as a large estate grows, and we can select the device there, going straight to the management of the device from VigorACS. So in terms of what's displayed in the landing page for the root network here, VigorACS 3 demo server, we can see Google Maps. So an API key is required to view Google Maps in ACS. On the right hand side, we have the network overview, and this is showing us the 4 subnetworks, and out of those 15 devices, 12 are currently online with 3 alarms. Looking at the root level overview, we can see the number of active clients across all the networks and registered devices, and it's listed by network here, the top number of devices which have clients connected, and we also have the traffic information as well. So this is a total bandwidth usage across all the networks that are registered in ACS. So demo network seems to be generating the most traffic. So we can actually look at demo network here using this link. And this will bring us directly to the dashboard for demo network. On the top left, we will see the focus now change to demo network, and we're getting key information displayed. One major change on this dashboard is we now have a device overview, which showing that there are 6 routers connected in this network, and we get key information. Looking at the left-hand side, the menu bar, we can see there is a new addition here when we're managing this subnetwork, which is Hotspot Web Portal, a brand new feature in VigorACS 3. If we look at the actual profile, this is where we can build new profiles or edit existing ones that have been previously created for the Hotspot portal. Let's look at this profile here, and we can see there are 3 stages in building a profile for Hotspot portal. Currently, the profile setup includes some basic settings, and one of those settings for this demo is the login method. There's multiple to choose from, but we will look at the leave info option. We have quota policy also as an option, so we can specify a time limit or a bandwidth limit for the wireless clients that are connecting to the Hotspot portal. Selecting continue now allows us to actually design the splash page, and any changes that we make will be reflected on the right hand side here. This is the view that would be experienced by the wireless client. So currently we're using a color for a background layout. We can choose an image, and we can even upload our own image very easily here. If we choose to use a logo or not, currently it's using the DrayTek logo, we can image upload, select here which image you want to use for full customization of the Hotspot portal. We can see how this will look when used on a mobile device. And if we go to the components, we can actually choose which features are enabled or disabled. So we've got things like terms and conditions here and marketing, which we can add certain text for. And looking at this icon here, we can see the terms and marketing, how they will be displayed. The login method that we chose was going to be leave info type, and here we can add or remove the fields that we want to use, whether those fields need to be completed before the wireless client can continue with registration to the service. The next option is setting up the whitelist. So this is what traffic is actually allowed without actually registering to the service. So there might be certain destination domains that you want to include in that. So that's fully configurable here. Once the profile has been created, at that point we can actually specify the network and devices that this configuration profile will roll out to. So individual devices can be selected, or you can select the parent network here for these devices, and all the devices will receive that configuration. Going back to the demo network dashboard, we can actually see that one of the devices is generating the most bandwidth in this network. So viewing the traffic graph here, we can see this 2865 is generating the most bandwidth. From the device overview, we can quickly locate that device and use this link to go to that device dashboard. So here is the 2865. We can see which firmware is currently running on this device, 4.2.3, and we can see the uptime of the device also. The front panel now loaded, we can see the LAN ports that are in use, and we can see that in terms of WAN connectivity, it's using a DSL connection. That's a VDSL2 connection, and we can see the download and upload speed. On the right hand side is the bandwidth usage and which WANs are currently in use. So only WAN 1 is currently active, and we can see the uptime of that WAN connection along with the IP address as well. As we scroll down, we can see information on the LAN. So this device supports up to 8 LAN subnets, but only LAN 1 is currently active and being shown. But there's 14 clients currently on that LAN. Additional information on this page will depend on which router model or switch or access point is being selected, and key information can be gained to understand the setup of that site. There are tools at the very bottom here which allow us to do a configuration backup, restore the configuration to the last configuration that was held in VigorACS, download that last configuration that's held in VigorACS, and also reboot the device. Configuration can be done from this area here. So any of the menu options that would appear on the router should also be available to you here. So we can check any configuration, what the current settings are, but also make a change to that configuration. And when we select the Save button at the bottom right, that change is immediately applied to the router. This is making a change to one device currently on this screen. But if there was a change that you needed to make across the board, the whole network, or just multiple devices, VigorACS has the option for provisioning, which allows you to build a profile based on the configuration change you want to do, and you can schedule that change and select which devices should receive that change. So a very easy way to actually maintain configuration and apply configuration changes to devices using VigorACS. Another configuration that you might want to do on a device is to do a firmware upgrade. This is something you can do in the system maintenance section when we're managing a specific device. So we can do configuration backup here and firmware upgrades. And again, this upgrade would be an immediate change. If you needed to schedule the change for a firmware upgrade, so this is not going to affect the site by any downtime, that can be scheduled for an out of hours change using the system firmware upgrade option here. Now let's move on to the SD-WAN functionality of VigorACS 3. If we go to the network management area of VigorACS, we can see the structure of the demo server, and we can focus on a specific network. So this demo network here has advanced settings. This is a new feature in VigorACS 3, and we have the option to enable SD-WAN. In doing so, VigorACS 3 will instruct the registered devices in this network that support SD-WAN functionality with the bulk data settings. Bulk data is a way for the devices to report back to VigorACS key information about different categories. The categories are WAN and VPN, VoIP, users and apps. This is done at set intervals, but this can be modified. The 6 devices that are in this network will already have this configuration applied, but any new devices in the future that register to this same network will also receive the instruction to report the bulk data settings back to VigorACS. Let's look at one of the devices that has received the configuration to report bulk data, and this is a 2865. We can see there's a couple of WAN connections here, the Ethernet WAN and the USB 4G connection as well. If we were to go into the WAN general setup, we can see there are information on the latency, jitter and packet loss. Now this is only available since VigorACS 3 has activated the SD-WAN functionality on the device. The router is able to monitor each of its WAN connections and report back information on these values. The router is generating these values by looking at the link condition detection. The router is pinging a primary and secondary IP address at a set interval. Based on the values that are created here, the mean opinion score is generated, and all of these values are sent back to VigorACS. So if we return back to the demo network and we view the dashboard for the demo network, we can see there is an option for SD-WAN. If we select the SD-WAN option here, this will bring us to the SD-WAN dashboard itself. There are 3 sections of the SD-WAN dashboard. There is the WAN on the left, in the middle we have VPN, and on the right it's VoIP. To begin with, we'll look at the WAN. First of all, we get a summary of how the WAN connections have been performing over a certain period of time. This is separated by wired WAN and wireless WAN. For the wired WAN, we have an average MOS score of 4.4 over the last 24 hours across all of the devices in demo network. And 99% of the time, those WAN connections have been greater or equal to 4.0. For the wireless WAN, it's actually been quite similar. If we actually look for the last 7 days, we can change the period here from 24 hours through to 30 days. We can see the average score is now 2.9. So there has been some issues on the wireless WAN connections. If we look at the active physical WAN available, there are a total of 7 WAN connections online. 6 of them are wired, and 1 of them is the wireless WAN USB connection. Currently, in terms of the active physical WAN quality across all the devices in the demo network, they're all showing as great. We can select more, and this will provide information on each individual device that's registered into ACS. Here we can actually see a breakdown of each of the devices, latency, jitter, and the packet loss. If we select one of the devices here, it's 2865, we can actually see WAN 2 and WAN 6. We can break down each individual WAN interface, the performance of those. If we select one of our routers in the network, we will get historical information about the WAN quality for this site. So this is a 2865 here. It's currently using WAN 1, and we can see the IP address of that connection and the uptime. What we can see here is actually the usage, interface, latency, jitter, and packet loss over a period of time. Currently, this is set at a certain schedule that has been previously looked at. We can actually come out of the custom period there and look for the last 6 hours, for example, and will be displayed here with the usage and any changes in the quality of that WAN connection as well. So pretty stable in terms of this WAN connection, but this is showing you how it's quite easy to look back on possible reported problems from sites to actually indicate if it was the WAN connection that dropped or is it actually the WAN quality that was affected for the site. But there doesn't really appear to be any issues for this site here. Now we'll move on to the VPN functionality of SD-WAN. So we'll go back to the demo network and look at the SD-WAN dashboard. In terms of the VPN functionality that's offered, between 2 devices that support SD-WAN functionality, we can get information on the VPNs themselves. So we can see out of the devices that are registered to the demo network, there are 2 VPN connections, 2 IPsec VPNs. Again, we get information on the average MOS score available, and currently the quality of those VPN connections appear to be great, between 4.3 and 5. Selecting the More option here will give us information on the VPNs themselves. And we can see here that we have the 2 VPNs created between the source and destination sites, the type of VPN, uptime of these VPN tunnels, and some other key information which determines the interface MOS score. The Google Maps integration there allows you to actually look in detail where these devices are located. And there's a color key indicator based on them being great VPNs currently determined by the MOS score. So we've got the color purple for the links between the sites. In terms of creating the VPNs, VigorACS 3 has made it even easier than it has been previously. There was a drag and drop option in previous iterations of VigorACS. Now, when we use VigorACS 3 and SD-WAN, we're able to build new VPNs by selecting just the headquarter site and specifying if we want a hub and spoke VPN or a full mesh. And ACS will automatically build the VPNs between all of those sites. Next, we will look at the VoIP monitoring that's available. So on the right-hand side of the SD-WAN dashboard, we have VoIP, and we can see over the last 24 hours, the average MOS score has been 4.4. There's no current active calls displayed, but we can look at the history of some VoIP calls by selecting the More option here. Let's look over the last 30 days and select OK. So for the demo network, we've had a total of 17 calls over the last 30 days, and 15 of those calls have been receiving a MOS score of between 4.3 and 5, so currently great. If we remove this and we focus on the poor call that has been recorded, so we can get information on the peer IP address and source IP address of the call and which interface was used, the start time, duration of the call, and we can see the latency, jitter, and any packet loss, and the overall MOS score that's been applied here. So this is a great way to actually review any calls that have been made between sites, and we can also look into any reports of any poor quality that's been reported. In terms of the VoIP, what we can also do is we can set configuration for VoIP WAN. So if we have sites that have got multiple WAN connections, VigorACS can enable VoIP WAN, and we can determine if the router should change the VoIP WAN when the current WAN MOS score is less than a certain value. So the default here is 3.5, but that is customizable. And the VoIP WAN should only reroute the traffic through the new WAN interface only if the alternative WAN is better by a certain value as well. So this is a great way to actually try and ensure that remote sites always have great VoIP quality. Another feature in VigorACS 3 is the route policy. Route policy allows us to configure settings for how certain traffic should be routed across the WAN interfaces. There's a profile here that we can look at, and this profile here allows us to see that certain configuration can be applied. These route policies are applied at the network level, and we can set criteria. So the source allows us for any or an IP range. Destination allows for any IP range VoIP traffic, or also application services. The advanced mode allows us to specify what happens on failover. So we get very similar options here with the MOS score for when we're using VoIP. For application services, what we can also do here is specify certain applications that will be routed via a specific interface, whether that be LAN, WAN, or a VPN profile. So we've got a selection of applications here, but we also can do is select a search, let's say for Zoom and also for Teams. So this type of traffic we can ensure is always routed via a specific WAN interface. And if that WAN interface is down, we can fail over to an alternative WAN connection. Configuring this and saving it to the devices will ensure that all devices have a specific routing policy that you require. The final area to cover on SD-WAN is the data usage options. So we have data usage there, but before we go to that, what we can actually determine is if we found a network that is generating lots of traffic. So we have a network here and there's specific sites that's generating traffic. VigorACS is able to look at the monitoring in clients to actually view the overall traffic that's been generated. And we can sort this by traffic here to understand which clients are generating the most traffic amongst the demo network. We can view over a time period that we want, currently set as the last 24 hours. So this is showing one specific device behind this 2865 is generating up to 8 gigabytes of traffic. What VigorACS 3 brings is data usage SD-WAN. We can actually interrogate more which applications are generating that traffic. So if you go into that 2865 device, and this will display on the dashboard here the total amount of traffic currently over the last 2 hours, but let's look over the last 8 hours here. Okay, over the last 8 hours, we've got 7 gigabytes of traffic that's been generated, and we have the categories on the right-hand side. If we look at VoIP, that's generating the most over the last 8 hours. It's mainly been Skype and Teams, and we can see the specific devices that are generating that traffic. And even go down to the download and the upload of that as well. Another example here might be for Google services. We can see the different Google services that have been generating the bandwidth, and we can see the devices that have been generating that traffic as well. As we scroll down, over this last 8-hour period, we can see the total usage, and we can sort by which applications have been generating the traffic as well. So in terms of Skype and Teams, we can see it's a total of 5 users, and we can see the upload and download. Also, we can search by the client device as well for application usage or bandwidth generation. Here we can see by device, upload and download, which clients have been generating the traffic. That brings us to the end of this demo for VigorACS and SD-WAN. Thank you for watching.
Thank you very much, Joe. That's very informative. It's good to see. There's quite a lot to take in. It's there's a lot in VigorACS, so lots of stuff to see and to show you. I'm hopefully now sharing my screen again. Yes, right. So we wanted to just cover some frequently asked questions that kind of commonly come up, and then we'll go to answer some of the questions you've asked over the webinar during the session. So one of the most common questions is what's the system requirements? So VigorACS runs on Windows or Linux. For larger installs, we recommend a Linux because it's generally better at the memory management. So for up to 50 nodes, we'd recommend something that has kind of 2 cores, 4 threads, 4 million cache, and about 6 gig of RAM and 1 terabyte of storage. For 500 nodes, we'd suggest something like 4 cores and then 8 gig of RAM and then 2 terabytes of storage. It kind of scales up as you've got more. If you look on the website, we've got some more in-depth recommendations if you've got a higher number of nodes. And the storage there is assuming you're not recording syslog. If you do record syslog to the ACS server, then the storage requirements go up for a fair amount because of the amount of information. But I generally wouldn't record syslog to the ACS server because that's something that's separate. We haven't shown anything related to syslog. The storage requirements there are basically showing everything that is core to the ACS that we've shown. For a trial, if you're interested in getting having a play with VigorACS, then there's free training available. Just contact us and we can set you up for a session, and you can get a 30-day 20-node trial very easily. There's a a sign-up page with a download link that we're going to be sending to all the attendees after the webinar that has details of how to sign up. One of the very common questions related to that is people who are already using ACS. So how can you upgrade from ACS2 to ACS3? So we tried to make the upgrade as seamless as possible. It should work quite well. There's a few things that I wanted to just cover on that. There aren't any costs to upgrade from ACS2 to ACS3. You're able to do a one-way upgrade that converts your license to ACS3, and that will continue for the rest of the term of your license without any additional costs. The price of the licenses of ACS2 and ACS3 are the same, so it's the same price per node, with the exception that ACS3 deals with access points and switches slightly better, so they only count as half a node, so you're slightly better off on ACS3 compared to ACS2. You can, it's a one-way update, so you can, contact support for assistance if you want to do a trial or play around with a separate server. That's definitely possible, and we can help you with that. The recommendation is to update your ACS2 server to the latest version first. So in this example, it's as we record this currently, it's 2.552. So update it to that version first before you then update to ACS3. But we've got a migration that keeps all of your settings, your profiles, kind of stats and everything. So you shouldn't need to replace anything. One important thing to check is the MariaDB version. Depending on when you installed ACS2, it's possible you might be on the older branch of MariaDB, which is MariaDB 5. If you are on 5, then you need to update to 10 first. There's some instruction on how to update the MariaDB. It's not a traumatic process, it's fine. It's just something you have to do before you upgrade to ACS3. The MariaDB 10 is bundled with the installation files. Do contact support for any assistance if you got any questions relating to updating your ACS2 server to ACS3. We'd be very happy to help you with that. But it's something that it should be quite straightforward and seamless. There's very few changes in as I mentioned, the underlying core between the two. So it's really just a straightforward update from our point of view. Question is about multi-tenant. So if you wanted to kind of have your customers being able to log into the ACS server, the question is about how can you segregate them, and is that possible? And the answer is yes, that's very possible. We have different groups and networks, so you can create a group, and a user can be a member of one or more groups. So you could have your staff member of all the groups, and then you could have individual customers assigned to a group with a network assigned to that group. There's a wholesale wizard that allows you to create the networks more easily, so that you can automate that as well, and you can assign different user groups and different networks, and also different roles and privileges as well. So if you don't want to use the wholesale wizard, you can have individual people with certain access, maybe someone with just view-only access. So there's the information on the roles on a website article that tells you about the different privileges, so it's possible for you to, if you want to provide customers with access, which I think on some of the SD-WAN stuff, it's something that people are quite interested in, getting better insights onto the network. So I think something you might find more demand for with ACS3, with the move for SD-WAN. So that covers some of the kind of frequently asked questions. So now I'd like to really cover some of the questions that you've answered during the asked during the call. So we've answered most people directly, but we just wanted to cover some of the questions that have been covered. So you can still keep answering questions directly. We've got people answering on the chat, but I'll pick some of the most common ones. So the one question is about the cloud version. Is there going to be a cloud version of ACS3? So this is where DrayTek are hosting it, and the answer is yes, there will be a cloud version. It's just that version isn't quite ready yet, due to the slight differences in how the cloud is structured. So we'll be announcing that later once that version is ready, and then we'll be scheduling kind of updates of the various ACS servers that DrayTek are running. So you'll have that, and additionally there should likely be a free tier version of ACS, but the exact functionality in that free tier is still to be decided. So I'll have more information on that later. So that's the include the version for DrayTek dealers. So we'll be providing some information directly to deals on that. Common question was about free upgrades to ACS3, so I think I've covered that already, that you can upgrade from ACS2 to ACS3 quite seamlessly. A question that's come up is about some kind of provisioning. So I think this might be one that you'll be able to answer, Joe. The question is, does a router need to have a kind of a provisioned internet connection for them to be deployed by ACS? It's kind of, I guess, a question about if you've got multiple sites and you want to be shipping units to site, can you kind of send it with default settings? I wanted, Joe, if you had some kind of opinions on that.
Yes, I mean, in terms of a device being sent to a site and having some minimal configuration to be able to connect into the ACS and potentially ACS to complete the configuration for that specific site, that is something that is possible with the DrayTeks. I would suggest that if you are interested in that, you make contact with us, and we can help you facilitate that.
Yeah, I think you've worked personally with some various ISPs and system integrators on those sort of projects. So yeah, do get in contact with your account manager, and they'll be able to put you in contact and arrange some sessions for that. A common question whenever we mention account managers is, who is my account manager? The answer to that is to email info@draytek.co.uk, and we can put you in touch for your company with the relevant account manager for you. So thank you very much, Joe. Another question about will VigorACS for SD-WAN be supported by the 2862? So it's a very kind of difficult one for us. The answer is it isn't, unfortunately. It's not going to support the SD-WAN. We looked at it because of the reason was down to memory limitation, because of the kind of all the functionality you put in the 2862. There wasn't enough kind of spare memory to be able to allocate it to the SD-WAN functionality, while also using the additional kind of functionality of the router as itself. So we considered maybe we could kind of disable some functions or have two different firmwares, but in practice it was something that we thought was a bit too complicated to do for various different reasons, because of the having to disable functionality, and then if people are already using that functionality, kind of the impact on that and everything. So we've had to go with the choice of just supporting it with the later models that have more memory, that are able to cope with the additional SD-WAN reporting and memory requirements. So unfortunately, the things like the 2862 or the 2926 and other older models can't get support for SD-WAN. It's possible we might revisit that in the future, but as it stands currently, it's not something that we've got planned. So kind of it's unfortunate on that, but it's something that there's a limit to how much we can kind of push the memory usage of all the devices, and because we're packing in so much functionality, we kind of it's already kind of fully used for all the different various functions that it supports. There's a question here about the 2865 to do with the multi-WAN. It's a VDSL, but the question is, does it support other types of internet connections as well? I think, Joe, would you be able to kind of give an overview on that, on the different WAN connection types it supports?
Yeah, so a 2865 is one of our load balancing devices which supports multiple WAN connectivity. So depending really on the variant of model that you have, but all the 2865s support a DSL connection. So that will be either ADSL or VDSL. The device will auto sense between those types of connections. That's on WAN 1. The WAN 2 is a dedicated Ethernet port, so any Ethernet presentation can be used on that. There is, on the devices, you'll have USB ports, so you'll have USB connectivity via USB dongle, so 3G or 4G connectivity there. Some of the devices, like 2865 LAC, so the L being the LTE models, will have SIM card slots in the back. There's actually a dual SIM slot on this model, but it's seen as one interface, so it can be used as the WAN connection there, but with two SIM cards, you're able to do, the routers are able to fail over between different SIM cards that's in the device, whichever one has got the best connectivity. So you might have different providers' SIM cards in that to be able to for the router to decide which one to use. And all of these WAN connections, you have full control of which one is the primary WAN connection, which one's a failover, or you could have them all active and have them load balancing connectivity and all the traffic.
Thank you, Joe. So looking at time, I think we will just have kind of 2 or 3 more questions, and then we'll close the session. So one question here is about whether or not Hotspot will work with dynamic IPs, because now some phones will often have a privacy MAC address that they use that's dynamic, that will change when they connect to different networks. The question is whether or not that will work with the Hotspot functionality. And the answer to that is that yes, it will. Normally, the MAC is consistent for each kind of session, so it means that they'll be able to be authenticated and logged in, but it might be that when they return to the site, they might need to log in again. And also from the point of view of kind of seeing people, multiple visits to different sites, you won't necessarily be able to see that. They'll appear as more individual users for that. But from the point of view of being able to connect that will be fine for different phones that use dynamic MAC addresses. And another question here is about the kind of single point of failure. With VigorACS 3 facilitating so much on the network with the hotspot, SD-WAN and visibility, makes it kind of a single point of failure. So the question was about kind of what options is there for resilience. And an answer on that is that we do have a version of VigorACS 3 that will have geo-resilience, where you can run 2 servers side by side with them sharing the load and kind of automatically failing over if one of them has an issue. So that's a version that's going to be launched later this year for the self-hosted. So we'll be announcing news on that, but that's a development in the pipeline that we will have more news soon. So question about support for SD-WAN. It's kind of, will the 3910 support it? And the answer is yes, that will. There's some beta firmware at the moment, so if you wanted to contact support, they'll be able to share that with you, but there will be a formal release for that kind of shortly later. I think we'll say this year, but it'll be sooner than the end of the year. It's something that should be launched in the next month or so. So I think that covers a lot of the questions. I think we've been answering a lot of them directly. So I just wanted to really thank you all for attending. We'll be sending a follow-up email with some details for links for you for follow-up. And if you've got any questions, then email info@draytek.co.uk. With that, we can give you some more information. And I just wanted to thank Joe for the presentation. That's very informative. Thank you for the demo, and thank everyone for attending, and hope you found it useful, and hope to see you in some of our next events in the future. So thank you very much, everyone, and goodbye.